welcome to Empowered Women, and today I've got a fantastic guest, and this guest has actually joined the army at a very, very young age, stood on her own 2 feet from a very young age, and has actually taken herself right through the ranks to one of the highest ranks, where the percentages to get there are very low for women and men. And this person I'd like to introduce you to is Leanne Parkes. So thank you for joining me, Leanne. How are you?
I'm all right, Gemma. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No, thank you for being here. So I'd like to just start really with your journey into, your career path, from the very beginning, just so we can get some background and to where you are now. That'd be a great place to start.
Okay, so the reason that I joined up in the first place, because my family's got no military background whatsoever, so I wasn't going in my father's or grandfather's footsteps or anything like that. It was actually my best friend who had joined up. She was a bit older than me, so she joined up 2-3 years before. So I'd left school and I ended up working in, Jewel's factory that made shirts for men's Marks and Spencer's.
Yeah, I read that, yeah.
And I went to work when it was dark, and I came home when it was dark, and it was soul destroying. I found it absolutely soul destroying. So I thought, I'm going to have to do something. Anyway, my friend at this time, she'd been through basic training, and she was actually living and posted out in Germany. And she kept writing to me on all the little free blueies that you got, telling me what an amazing time she was having. And I ended up I was going out with a lad for about 2 weeks that was in the army, and that was it. I was like, right, that's it, I'm doing it. Yeah. And I literally, this was in the September, I went home and said to my mum and dad, I'm going to join up, and they just started laughing at me as if like, that is never going to happen, you're far too wild and all the rest of it. And so I did, and I didn't look back. So I went to the careers office in the September, and I was actually in basic training in the January. So I had zero time to think about anything. And then I was on my first tour of Bosnia in the July.
Wow.
So I literally, it wasn't even a year from going to the careers office, to being in Bosnia.
So it was literally
just over 1 year, and I found myself in Bosnia. And it was when Kosovo was kicking off as well. So it was a really, really scary time. Like, I'd literally just gone 19 and didn't know what day it was. And I felt like, hold on a minute, 1 minute ago I was working in Jewel's factory, and now I'm in the middle of a war zone, like, literally. But I loved it. And immediately I loved it and knew this is what I was going to do. And this is where I was staying.
So you went and did that straight away from the age of 19, and then what did you go on after then? So you stayed, how long was your tour in Bosnia?
So all the tours that we're going to talk about are 6 months long.
Right.
Apart from the one that got cut short because I had an accident. So yeah, literally I passed out of basic training in the May, and I flew out straight to Germany. That was my first post in Germany, because that's where my best mate was at the time. So we were thinking we were going to be posted together and all that. We actually weren't. And then she left, and then I was in Bosnia. So I went straight out to Germany. So I was literally 18 years old, never travelled anywhere on my own, and I was in Germany on this plane, had to get on this bus, went to camp, nobody there to meet you. Eventually got took to my room, and it was a tiny little bed about this wide with itchy blankets, and it was just, for a second, it's like, what are you doing? What is actually happening here? And then you just start getting your head around that and how you're living. And then the next thing, you're in Bosnia and you're in the middle of a war zone. So again, you're like, what is going on here?
Wow.
Yeah. So that was 6 months. And then for the next 6 years, I did 6 months on tour, 6 months off tour. So I went to Bosnia twice and Kosovo twice. And then I went to Belize as well at the end of it for 6 months. So it was literally, like a whirlwind. But it was some of the best times I've ever had.
How did you find it then, being like away from home and family and comforts, and probably like the world you only ever knew? Do you know what I mean? How was that at that age?
Yeah. I was all right with it, because I've always been quite confident, and I can always like go and speak to anybody really. But I think, half of the reason to my success is because of my family as well. And because they're such a great support, and whether I did 1 week in the army or 20 years in the army, nobody was going to think any different of me. And I always had that comfort that I could walk back to mum and dad's and still have a house over my head. They'd be still super proud. And that was always a great comfort, you know, whereas a lot of my friends joined the army to escape family, escape home, and then they had to stay in because they didn't have anything to go back to, you know, and I was never, ever in that position. And I think that's got a lot to do with being successful, because I had the absolute best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people don't. Yeah, the support. And even now I've got Matilda, I wouldn't be able to still do what I do and commit and be as passionate about the army without the love and support of my family that rally around all the time.
Yeah. But it's key, isn't it? It's like that, you know, but like the fact that you made that decision at a young age, but your family's still going, all right, then if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
You know, and we're here for you. Did it have an impact on your mum and your dad, you being like at that age away? And
yeah, I mean, mum and dad never ever, they talk about it now, but certainly when I went to Bosnia at 18, they were just like, their world had caved in on them a little bit, because they were just like, that's our little girl. And like, you are a kid. Like, I didn't think I was a kid at 18 and in the army and going to Bosnia. I thought I was the bee's knees. But when you look back on it, you are actually still a child. At 18, we still look at our kids and, like, you know, they're still kids. They don't really know what they want, you know, at 18. And there I was in the middle of Bosnia when it was all kicking off. But I thought it was great. But mum and dad, you know, have said that the worst times of their entire life is whenever I've been away. Whenever. Because mum was always like, any knock at the door, her heart dropped. You know, it totally dropped, because you just didn't know what that call was going to be, or where it was being, you know, what it was going to be about. And it was just always that dreaded feeling that something's happened to her when she's been away. Yeah.
I can obviously vouch for that with Stephen, my partner, when he was in the army for so long, and he did Afghan and Iraq, and he did the tours that he did. And it, like, from that side of, like, the only thing I had to hope on to, like, with hope, was that little e-bluey, or the bluey at the time, that came through the post.
Yeah.
And that was the only communication. So the rest of the time we could go like week to week, and depending where he was and what access he had, I didn't know if he was safe. I didn't know if he was nothing. So I can completely relate to that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And it's hard work when you're on tour. It really is. And there's nothing else to do apart from work, because, you know, there's no pub or naffy to go to, so to speak. You can go and have a cup of tea or whatever, but you're literally working 12 to 18 hour days.
Wow.
And so writing a long, you know, when I was 18, I wasn't thinking about how that was affecting everybody at home. Not even if it was a couple of sentences. You know, I know now I'm a parent myself, that I would die. I would like thinking, oh my goodness, what's that? You know, but at 18, as a child, you just think, I can't be bothered to write that today. You know. So mum and dad were the same. Sometimes it's weeks, but, you know, the communication now is much better, the Wi-Fi and the email and the text and all the rest of it, but we just didn't have that back in the day. So yeah, it must have been really torturous for them when I went away with them. The first 6, 7, 8 years must have been torturous for our mum and dad, but I loved it. I was chasing the tour. I was like, can I be posted in that squadron because they're going away? Can I do this? Can I do that? And, like, literally chased it. You know, but it's funny because now I've got Matilda, and I don't want to go away anywhere. I still love the army, and I still have a great passion for it. But I do believe that I've done my little bit. But that's not what the army will think. The army, it's the needs of the service comes first. So if I am successful at commissioning, and they say, right, you're going to that squadron, and you're going to have to go out to Kenya or, you know, wherever it may be for 6 months, then I'll just have to go. Wow. As much as I wouldn't want to now. You know, it's a grave stark difference from 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah. How would you deal with that then? You know, like, now you've got little Matilda, and you want a settled home life, you want to be at home as much as you possibly can be, you know, be part of that. If that was to happen, like, how do you deal with that?
You just have to be really strong and always understand why you're doing it. Like, me going to work every day, me trying to commission, is for Matilda, for me to have a great career, but essentially, you know, whatever we get out of the end of it is essentially for Matilda. And so we can have a lovely, comfortable, stable life in the end. So it might not be that stable while we're in, with us moving every 2 or 3 years. And if I have to go away for a period of time, but you have to just think what's really important here. And 6 months out of anybody's life is not a long time in the grand scheme of it. You know, people say, like, I like to move every 2 or 3 years, and people think I'm crazy, but to people in the army, 2 and 3 years is not a long time. You know, it's a change as good as a rest. We get itchy feet, we like to move it on. You know, and that's why the army is as good as it is, because of people like me and like-minded people that like, oh, we've been here for 3 years now, let's move somewhere different, see something else, do something else. But like I said, the important thing is to remember what's important and why we're doing it.
Yeah.
You know, and I would miss it dearly, but I would just have to do it because that's my job, that's what I committed to. It's what I love as well, you know, I'm really passionate about it. And she'd always be safe. If she would come home and she would be safe as houses with everybody that loves her.
Yeah.
You know, and like I said, 6 months is not a long time in the grand scheme of life. So
would you say then, so like you went in the army to just, because it sounded like a great fun and you enjoyed it. Like now you keep saying, look at the bigger picture, look at what it's for. Would you say that it's important then to be able to deal with that mindset thing, to have a goal like in the future? Is that what you've got? Something that you like think like, this is what I'm working to?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at every rank, you know, I believe I've learned something at every rank about myself, about people. And what's important is always the people. And what I now understand and fully understand, or I like to think I've got a much better understanding of, is understanding other people's needs. So if I understand my soldiers' needs and I can help them with that, I'm going to get the best out of them, which in turn makes me look good, because we've all done a good job collectively, and I understand that he needs a little bit of this, she needs a bit of tough love because she's a bit wild, or, you know, he's having a bit of trouble at home. And it's always about the people. And never more so has that been more important to me. And if I can make a little bit of a difference to somebody's life every day, that gives me great pleasure. Like, it really does. And I think as well, that's why I've been quite successful, because... Are you there, Gemma? I'm so sorry. Ring. Yeah, someone's trying to ring. And I think that's why I've been successful, because I love people. And in the army, it's all about the people and the comradeship and all the rest of it that comes with it. But yeah, goals have changed as I've gone on. So now, for me to commission, which is what my next goal is.
So what is commission then? Just so people know.
Potentially, I can... Okay, so I didn't have a degree when I joined up at 18, so I had to join as a soldier. All the young lads and lasses that go to uni before they join up. So I went to Purbright and done basic training. If you've got a degree at 21 and you're going to careers office and you want to join up, you have to join up as an officer. And they go to Sandhurst and do their year's training at Sandhurst. So what we say is that the officers are the brain of the operation, and the non-commissioned officers are the brawn. You know, so they do all the planning and we execute the plan. So for me, I've been in, this is my 21st year of service now. So, and because I'm a WO1, and because I've got all the ticks in the right boxes and the right recommendations of my bosses and that, I can be put forward to go for commission, a late entry commission, we call it. And the army needs late entry officers, because we bring 20 odd years of experience to the table that a young lieutenant, a young captain who has been to uni, been to Sandhurst, he's been in a couple of units and just doesn't understand what makes it all tick over, and that's up to us as well. So for me, we're the in-between between the officers that join up as direct entry officers, and we're the link men and women to the soldiers, because we understand, we have lived and breathed everything that they've done, but also the officers have had that year in Sandhurst of military knowledge, military tactical, military skills training that is required also. So it's a good mix of everything, but the LE officers like me, which I want to be, are totally the link between the two. Right. So he might come to me with a plan and say, right, we're doing this, and I'm like, no, because you haven't thought how that's going to affect that, how that's going to affect that. And that certainly can't happen to that individual because they're not at that point at this moment in time. So you just have to go and relook and readjust. Yeah. And they're like, and any switched on one will go, oh yeah, actually you're right, and take on board everything that you've said. Right. So yeah, totally important, really, really important in my opinion, the LE officers, yeah. So going back to the goal, sorry, going back to my goal, I can potentially put Matilda through boarding school right till she gets to the end of senior school, as year 11, as senior school as I know and love it. And I just think I couldn't give my own little girl a greater gift than a private education. If she's that way inclined and she wants to do it and everything's agreed. So yes, certainly that's way up there on my goal. If I was to commission, potentially look at putting Matilda in boarding school, because that's crucial for me to give her the best education. Yeah.
Would you want Matilda to go down the route that you've gone? Like, would you be happy if she came in and said, I want to do the army, I want to do these tours and these like risk zones? What would you say?
I would never discourage her at all. I wouldn't discourage anyone from joining any of the forces. I personally have had a great life in the army, and it's given me everything and all the tools, personal tools, you know, that I feel now I'm equipped with, is all come from being in the army. Some people don't have the same journey. I get that, you know, but I think, as well, as I said earlier, my family, the love, the support and everything that's been there has just made for it a great life. And if Matilda wanted to join up, I would certainly give her the same love and support and encouragement that my family have given me, so that she can go and do it. You know, and actually, you know, I would say bring back a bit of what's the word for it? I forgot.
The service where you used to have to do it.
Yeah, what's it called?
What's it, national service?
National service, Gemma, yeah. I think even if every kid at 16, 17, 18, because you don't know what you're going to do then. You don't know what you want in life. National service, 16, 17, 18, if you're not going off to uni and doing whatever, to just give you a few years to think about what it is that you want to do. And in there, they'll get a bit of education if they haven't got it from school. They'll learn some life skills about looking after themselves. You know, they'll go on adventure training, they'll do team bonding stuff, and they'll do things that will push them to the absolute limit for 3 years. And I bet you, I would like to say that 80% of them would stay in, because it's a great life. The money's great for what we do, you know. And the private soldiers have just got like a 20% pay rise to bring them up to normal standard of living. So we're slowly catching up in that respect as well. But like I say, it's a great life, and I wouldn't discourage anybody, especially my own daughter, no.
Yeah. So like for yourself now, you're a WO1.
Yeah.
You're going up, waiting for the board for commissioning. So what ranks have you had to go through then? Because like if you're in Civvy Street, like the army and the ranks, you kind of know some, but then you don't. So like, what has your journey been then?
Okay, so you join up as a private soldier once you're out of basic training. You're classed as Private Parkes. And then you will have to go on. So I was really quick in my first few ranks. So after 18 months, I got promoted to Lance Corporal, because I'd done a tour of Bosnia, a tour of Kosovo, and because I loved it and I was quite good and I sort of like shone out there on your annual reports that get written. It said all the right things. So straight after 18 months, I'd got my Lance Corporal, 2 years. And then after that, to get your full corporal, you had to go on a 4-week course, which tested you to the absolute limit. Sleep deprivation, physical, mental, you know, education. So all of that mixed into a 4-week course, which was, you know, at 19 is tough. 19, 20 is tough. But again, came out top student on that, so was successful again straight away. And so then got full corporal. And then quickly in 2006 got my sergeant, and had to go on yet another really tough course and a separate education course this time. So the army are getting much better as well at English, maths, numeracy, literacy levels, this, that and the other. And you can't be promoted to the next rank without that. So there's no one escapes it, you know. So the army are getting really good at that sort of stuff as well. And everything's got a transferable skill now to civilian qualification. So, you know, they're getting really good. They're catching up. It's took them a little bit of a while, but we are getting there, and everybody gets accredited for everything now. So yeah, 2006, I got my sergeant. And then I actually marked time for a little bit. I stood still for 5 years as a sergeant. Not for no rhyme, no reason. There was just better people than me at the time, obviously, and they got promoted first. But then we all seemed to catch up together in about the 12-year point. So yeah, then got staff sergeant. When I worked in welfare, learned a lot about soldiers and their families when I worked in welfare, and then got to 1 officer class 2 sergeant major. which is what I loved. I always wanted to carry that stick around and shout at people, which is what I thought I was going to do when I was younger. But then when I was actually there, I learned quickly that I didn't want to be part of people's problems. I wanted to be part of solving their problems. You know, and working a little bit in welfare taught me that not everything that walks in the door is as it seems. You know, you don't know what's under them layers and what is making people tick or not tick, so to speak. Yeah, so that went private Lance Corporal, Corporal, Sergeant, Staff Sergeant, Warrant Officer Class 2 and Warrant Officer Class 1 is the top of the tree that we can go.
So when you're a Warrant Officer Class 1, like, what's your responsibility then, like, now?
So a Warrant Officer Class 1 can be, so you can get a number of roles, and some of them are regimental duties, we call it, and some of them are technical. So I've been lucky and I've done both. So I was a regimental sergeant major, which meant the regiment is no less than 500 people. And so you're in charge. So when you're a squadron sergeant major, that's exactly what you are. You're in charge of the squadron and the squadron discipline and the squadron training, setting the standards, making sure the standards are upheld. You know, the one with the stick that's always shouting and doing all the drill and making sure everyone's dressed smart and looks clean and all the rest of it. So when you go to regimental, it's exactly the same, but it's just on a much, much bigger scale. So I did regimental sergeant major for a couple of years, which was great, and I loved it. And then now I've just moved into a technical role. So now I'm the senior instructor, and I've got a very small team, but we're in charge of delivering training across the board, across defence, from private soldier right through to officer. So it's a totally different switchfire, sort of like regimental stuff, which is all clean the camp, make sure you're doing this too, sitting down, teaching, mentoring, coaching, making sure they're where they should be and churning them out some good operators the other side. Yeah.
Wow. So to get to where you are then, it can't have been like an easy, it's not just like a rite of passage, is it? Like you don't just go, yep, and like through your career, it'll pop out as.
Yeah, no, absolutely nothing is the rite of passage. You have to work hard, you have to attend the courses. So quite early on as well, when I used to go and exercise a lot, and that was like going in the field and digging in and living in the hole and running around with camp cream on and all that sort of stuff, I quickly learned that I didn't want to be in the group. I wanted to be one of the instructors that was telling us what to do, with their hands in their pockets, with their warm jackets on. They were going back to a tent with a heater in it, you know, and our fingers were like this because it was so cold. So I was laid in one of them holes and quickly learned that, oh no, I don't want to be laid here for any longer than I have to. I want to be out there. So you go out there and you put yourself out for all the courses that are really tough, like, you know, your chemical course, so you know how to protect yourself against, that's 4 or 5 weeks long. Your weapons course, so you can teach people how to fire a weapon, you know, that's 6 weeks long. And your first aid course, that can be, depending on how far you want to take that, you know, to team medic sort of like level, is 4 weeks long. So by doing all that, you're getting all these ticks in the boxes, because to your OC, the officer in command, the major, you're bringing so much more to the party than the person stood next to you who's happy to lay in the hole and be freezing and continue to run around like a nutter, you know, whereas I quickly switched on to, oh no, I could just say that's much easier. Won't do a really couple of hard courses and then you get to be in the warm tent. You know, that just makes perfect sense to me. Why wouldn't you do that? Yeah. So that's what I've done. I've gone off and done some military courses and made myself much more employable as well. Yeah. By doing that.
So anybody listening then, what would you say are your skills basically, as in the way to, you know, at a very young age, you pick some up that other people obviously don't pick up, they don't even see. And like, what would you say to somebody who's like in a rut, or somebody who wants to move forward and progress like you have, you know, gone through ranks, boom, 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 and done things, and it might not be in the army sense, but just in life, or whatever goal they're heading towards. Like obviously you mentioned, first of all, you need a goal. You need to know what direction you're going into. With a lot of people don't even have that. They're just in day to day. So what would you say, what was the crucial things about you that got you to where you are today?
I think it's my own personal standards and my fear of failure. Now, don't get me wrong, I've failed a couple of major courses throughout my time as well. But what I've also learned is that it's okay to fail, actually. But what makes the mark of the person is how you dust yourself off and get over it, learn from it, and get back onto it straight away, get back on the horse, so to speak, straight away. So I think that's what drove me in the early years of like, I can't fail it. It'd be so embarrassing to go back to the unit and say that I failed it, but I did it, and I've done it twice. I did it a couple of years ago on my first commissioning course. I wasn't successful, and I failed miserably because I just didn't prepare enough. I thought I could just saunter through it. So even 20 years down the line, you're still getting taught all these lessons about yourself. Like, you're actually not all of that. You're not that good. Wait, and just go on that course without preparing. You know, I mean, why did I think that in the first place? So again, I took another whole year out before I went for it again and spent 6 months preparing. And so fingers crossed, I felt stronger this time and much better. So fingers crossed that I'll get the result that I want. But, you know, you've got to have a plan. You've got to find something that makes you tick in Civvy Street or in the army. You've got to find stuff that make you tick. And for me, it's people and making a difference to people. Yeah. So, and by going on like an equality and diversity course, that enhances me, but it also equips me with the tools, you know, to help somebody else. So, you know, for example, I had a sergeant literally a couple of months ago, and we sort of like have come to the end of our road of working together for one reason or another. And I just felt that I couldn't help him anymore or advise him anymore. And he didn't want to listen or take my advice. So for the first time in 20 years, I had to sort of like give up on one of my own troops. Yeah. But it was the right thing to do. He wasn't happy. I wasn't happy. And I've got a small team at the minute, you know, and I can't afford to have one toxic person in the team, you know. So I asked him what he wanted. At the beginning of the year, we made a plan. He'd got into a bit of trouble. We made a plan. He said, you need a plan. I said, I think that you need to go and do a green course, go and do equality and diversity course, and make yourself much more employable. And then when it comes to getting posted early, it's supposed to be early 20, you can go back to the regiment and throw all these cards on the table and say, right, you're ready to rock and roll and you've got all this to offer. But he just, you know, so we were trying to make him a plan of what makes him tick, but he wasn't willing to. So I just had to let him go, you know, and it's the best thing. I've got a new team member who's keen, and he's gone back to regiment and he's now quite happy. So it's about being mature enough as well to understand when you've made the mistakes and when it's time to let somebody go. But I think it's absolutely crucial that people have a plan and you stick to it as best you can. Of course, no plan survives contact in the first instance. So if you get knocked down or you have to take a side step, then that's important, but always keep to the plan.
Yeah. And I think what you said there, Leanne, about the major thing for you, I think was, and I think everybody listening needs to take this on board, is the fact that even if you failed, like you said, it was a lesson. It was something that you didn't just go, oh, I failed, I'm giving up. You kind of went, I failed. But instead of like looking at everything external about like, well, why didn't that happen? You said like, you looked at yourself and said, I didn't plan.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Yeah, like, and it's about having, isn't it, like taking the lessons from that, like which you did. Then you've basically got back on the horse and you've gone again, but prepared.
Yeah. Absolutely, 100% prepared now. I'm prepared for the last one that I went on. But yeah, you've got to, and that's the mark of the person, you know. And again, I think that it becomes easier the older you get, the more mature and the more wise you get. I think that because a few years ago, I failed my first sergeant's course. And I was only went for the entrance test and had to go, and I was so mortified. I felt everybody was looking at me, everybody was laughing at me. Genuinely, that's what I felt like.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my goodness. And again, I wasn't allowed back on the course for another 6 months. So I had another 6 months to fully prepare for what I needed to do. And that was all I could think about. That was my plan. That was my goal now for the next 6 months to get prepared for this. So twice I've done that. So I didn't learn my lesson the first time. I went and done it again, you know, 10 years later, 12 years later. So and sometimes you get comfortable, I think, though, Gem. So it's good, you know, a bit of failure, you know, or a bit of like a kick up the bum there's nothing wrong with that. If you can learn from it, there's nothing wrong with it. You seem to get complacent, you know, walking around, oh yeah, I'm WO1, I'll go for my commission, it's no problem. Totally wrong attitude. And actually not commissioning me that time was 100% right, because I didn't put the performance in that was required. And you'd have been mental if you'd have took me on at that point, you know, according to the results. So still,
but it's that, isn't it? I think that in itself is having that skill of like you taking full responsibility, like my fault, I wasn't ready, and being able to get back on and do it. So like obviously being a woman, I look at the army and I think being a woman in the army, Is it more difficult as a career choice than would it be in like Civvy Street, you know, being a woman in a very male dominated space? Like, what's your experience?
Yeah. I'll be honest with you, Gemma. I haven't had any bad experiences through being a woman.
Right.
I know girls that have. I just personally haven't had that. But I don't know whether that's because I'm quite robust in that respect. Like, if one of the lads calls me chick or a bird, or it doesn't offend me, but it does some girls.
Right.
And I've seen it firsthand, and I think that's totally up to them. That's totally their opinion. But for me, that's small fry. And to pull somebody up on something like that, you're making a rod for your own back.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I did have a lad say before, oh, they had to give that to a girl. When I got my Lance Corporal, they had to give that to a girl. And I just turned around and went, if they had to give it to a boy, I'm sure they would have. And that was my answer to him. You know, and I wasn't going to let him steal my limelight and my bit of, like, I've been promoted, my happiness, because he was jealous or whatever. And that's the way that I am, though.
Yeah.
So I personally haven't ever had any female discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I felt totally on board with all the lads, totally on the same page. We all do the same courses. We all earn the same money. Yeah, and I feel like I'm miles better than a lot of the lads. But I always have done, because it's true. I mean, there's a lot of lads that have been better than me, but I'm also better than a lot of the lads, and I'm not afraid to tell them or show them that. Yeah. You know, the proof's in the pudding, and you keep getting promoted and they're not, then, well, you're not taking yourself out of your comfort zone, pet, so you can't complain.
Yeah, I love that. You just mentioned comfort zone. And that is it, isn't it? Like, a lot of people will just literally sit and rather not do anything, but stay safe. And like you said there, take yourself out of your comfort zone, just get out of it.
Yeah. So, as you know as well, one time when I was really out of the comfort zone, when I had my accident in Afghan and I broke my back.
How did that happen? What was that situation?
So again, there was, if we're talking about empowering women, there was a bloke doing a job, and we called it Jingly Ops. So it was dealing with all the local Afghan vehicles that were bringing our supplies in. So it was his job to book the vehicles and coordinate what camps they needed to be in at certain times, to pick up rations, to pick up water, to pick up whatever. So he wasn't doing a very good job of it. So my boss at the time, it was a female CEO, she was amazing. And she was like, right, you're moving over to that desk and you're doing that. So I was like, right, okay, I loved it. I was like, right, I'm gonna have a really, really busy job. And so I got sat behind the desk and I was like, this is just a total mess. Like, everything's a mess. And all our vehicles were getting held up at a point in Bastion. So I was like, right, I need to go down. So we flew down on a helicopter and I was like, no, I need to go out. I need to go outside and have a look and see what is going on with all our vehicles getting held up. So you have to move in convoy at the time and you have to stay within the radio bubble. But it was also the bomb bubble. We call it ECM and all that sort of stuff, but it's like the protection around the vehicle. And so we had to go join on the Americans convoy to go out, and we had to do top cover at the time. So I was in what we call the Snatch Land Rover, which have now been taken out of service because I think my accident was the last accident before they said we can't do this anymore. So I was stood out the top of my vehicle with my weapon, and we had to stay in the ECM bubble with the Americans. And so we just hit this massive ditch, and I sort of like got flung up in the air and then came straight back down and landed straight like on my bum and hit my head off, like, because it's only the size of the sunroof and all that weapon was like in my face and all the rest of it. So I was knocked out. But long story short, I broke my back in 2 places. So I quickly got rushed to hospital. I got bumped off the CT scan for a bomber, an actual bomber, because his injuries were worse than mine. Yeah, he just set a bomb off. Yeah, I know. But that's our great services, medical services. That's what they do. They look after the worst first. Yeah. So yeah, and then I was at home then for 7 months, recovering from it. Yeah, and that was really tough. I found that super, super tough. But I was determined to get back to work. And I went back to work, started on a 2 days back at work, and then 3 days, and built it up with occupational health like that. Yeah. And then what had happened that year is, off the back of Afghanistan and the good job that I'd done while I was sat in that chair for that little while, on my report that year, I'd got the best sergeant in the regiment and actually the best sergeant in the whole of the corps.
Wow.
But a rule had just come out that if you were downgraded, so clearly I had a broken back, so I was downgraded, and I was downgraded to the same grade as any of the lads or lasses that had lost any limbs. So we called that P0. And so a new rule had come out and said, if you're downgraded, you can't get promoted. So I couldn't think of anything else apart from getting upgraded and getting promoted, because that should have been mine. So I stayed a sergeant for 5 years, and so that was one of the reasons, because I missed that whole board, because I'd been down, because I was at home with a broken back, and I'd been downgraded. I missed that selection on the board because of that new rule. So I had to 7 months at home, get back to work, and then had a very short period of time to prove myself again. Still, you know, not at full fitness. I couldn't go on any courses. I couldn't put myself out of my comfort zone because I was totally and utterly restricted. So that was really, really tough time for me. Really tough. But
how did you find that mentally, knowing that, like, oh my God, that should have been mine. That like this accident now is like, stop that, because a lot of people probably things like that, then they might just stay there then, you know, like kind of, or even not want to go back into it. How did you overcome that?
I was just determined that spot was mine. You bang on the money there. I was utterly devastated, because that was my time. That was 100. I would never get a better mark than that, a better grade than that, or anything like that. That was 100% my time, and I was totally devastated about it. But again, pure and utter determination to make sure I don't miss it again.
Yeah.
Because of my, you know, the army is what I wanted to do, so I didn't want to stay in this rank any longer than it. I never want to stay in any rank any longer than I have to. It's fun. It's not for reasons that I couldn't help. Honestly, as I sit here, it's just pure determination, and I just can't sit here and just not have this happen, and just get on with it. Yeah.
Where do you think it came from, Leanne? Because obviously you joined the army, went and did something completely different to like what most girls were doing, leaving, you know, school and college and everything. When did that male, you know, dominated environment, started like, you know, shooting yourself through the ranks, like where you know, like you said, determination and that robustness, where do you think that's come from?
To be honest, I don't know. I love what I do with people, whether it's laying in the field, whether it's running around the field, whether it's going on exercise, whether it's jumping in a helicopter or whatever. Not one day is the same. And I think if you enjoy what you do, you're halfway there. And then if somebody else sees a little bit of something in you, that encourages you as well. And you think, I don't want to let anybody down here. Like, they've invested this time or put me on this course, they've entrusted me to do this, you know, or they give you that little bit of extra responsibility when should you really have it, but let's just test her anyway. You know, I feel like I've had that done to me quite a lot, you know, and I've always managed to cope with it. So, you know, who doesn't like the feeling of being praised and, you know, someone saying that you're really good at this actually, and this is what you should do, and you're really good at that, you know. And again, my own personal standards, just, I think I'm more scared of them than absolutely anything, you know. And that, I don't know, like, I don't know, to be honest. I just love it, and I just always want to do well. And yeah, huge enthusiasm and passion for it. And now I've got Matilda. I mean, I'd love the day if she goes to school and says, my mummy was a major in the army. She's in the army for like 30 years. I've just, you know, that's a little thing that I keep thinking about now.
Yeah, your legacy, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But as where it actually all came from, I don't know, Gemma. I just think it's a little bit of something and everything along the way that I think, yeah, I like that actually.
Yeah. Do you think it's a little bit of like, really truly, like, to get to where you are, like we spoke earlier off camera, and you said something like, to get to your rank right now, what's the percentages throughout the army of people getting there?
So my percentages might be out a little bit. It might be 3 or 5%, only 3 or 5% of the whole army reach WO1. the rank of WO1. That's across the board. That's not just in my corps, my job, my trade. That is across the board in the army.
Yeah. And
3% reach WO1.
Which is amazing, you know, like that's a huge achievement to like started from the, you know, very bottom, really young, gone right through it, experienced everything. What would you, you know, like having that much responsibility and people to kind of manage and ensure that it's not just a case of like a job, it's like these are people's lives here, you know, like everything part of the cog and, you know, and defending the country and everything else, you know, what have been the major challenges having that responsibility, you know, that have you faced ever?
When I worked in welfare, it was really tough, because we're talking about children having children, and then so I worked in welfare when I worked in Germany, and we had a paedophile, you know, children having children, like literally 18, 19-year-olds, they've got a baby and then they live in Germany. And like me, when I was 18, 19, didn't know what day it was, and when I was in the middle of Bosnia, but they have this whole other child, a baby to think about. And that scared me more than anything, was like, how are these people going to cope with, if I don't help them, how are they going to cope? They're not going to cope, you know. And the things I learned about people and myself there was the scariest 18 months I think I've ever had. That was a lot of responsibility, and you feel like you're carrying that around because your job as the welfare senior is exactly that. If something's having a direct effect on someone's welfare, you've got to help. That's your job. You've got to help.
Yeah.
And it's like you go on a couple of 1-week courses. You're not like a trained counsellor. You're not trained in debt management or anything like that. But that's what you did. Right. And I felt totally and utterly responsible for them, and that scared me quite a lot. Yeah, because we had young soldiers going in the mental house and stuff like that as well, because we just couldn't cope with life. You know, at such a young age, I'd never experienced anything like that. Yeah. Ever. I didn't know anybody. Only old people with dementia. You know, sort of like that script went in the homes and stuff like that. But we were signing kids in like left, right, and centre, and that was scary. That was really scary. Yeah. Yeah. But as well, the welfare package in the army now is far greater than when I joined up. Far, far greater now. And the things on offer, and, you know, COs take it so seriously now that it's a number one priority anywhere I can, along with
Sorry, Leanne, it seems like you're breaking up there. Wait for it to come back online. Hello?
You froze.
Yeah,
you're back now.
Yeah, that's better. Yeah. So, like, you know, like your journey then is like, I think it's pretty amazing to have been like no experience, like no background in the army, nobody in your family had it, and now you're in a position where you are in charge of probably thousands of people, like generally overall, like responsibility wise, you know, that you've gone through.
Yeah, I mean, with rank comes responsibility. So the higher up you get, the more responsibility you get, you know, and it might not necessarily be the greater number of people, but it'll certainly be the depth of your work becomes far more challenging, and you're responsible for a lot more procedures, important procedures that become policy, and you've got to make sure they're right, and that you're making big changes, you know, that have huge impact on people. So not necessarily the number of people, but certainly
the severity of the responsibility.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, like you said, you've never had any discrimination as being a woman, but did you find any challenges going through the ranks? Like you said, you had some bit of jealousy, like, oh, well, she was a woman, that's why she got that one. Have you had any of that? Or have you found that?
Yeah. Not that much, you know. No, I can't say that people have said she didn't deserve that, or because, you know, people know people, and if you're a hard worker and you get on and you do what you have to do and you take yourself out your comfort zone, or, you know, then people have got to respect that. Whether they like you as a person or not, they've got to totally respect what you're doing outside of the normal box, to put yourself out there. You know, so yeah, I'm not such a good example of having any dramas on the old female front, Jem. Sorry, but
no, that's great. That's great. You know what I mean? Because I'm not a person who thinks, oh, all females have the worst thing, because I don't believe in that. You know what I mean? I'm truly like a person like yourself thinks. You put yourself in situations, hold your ground, do your best, and be everything you possibly can be. Another thing, like you said, you know, you have your failures, you have your mistakes, you have your times when you've completely, what I say, fucked up, and like it's not gone completely as you thought it would go. But it's being able to look at yourself and go, that was me. You know, I'm going to take. And like you said, I think it boils down to being able to take full responsibility for everything that happens in your life. You know, and I think to the listeners listening, you know, listening to your journey,
100%, yeah.
You know, like you've said that you put yourself out your comfort zone. So I think that's a major key thing for anybody listening. You know, if you're scared of something, just go and do it. Because my attitude to life is probably similar to yours in the way that if you don't do it, you're in the same situation anyway. But you just didn't know. Yeah. So,
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I went and put myself on a course, you know, all the marching and stuff, because believe it or not, I'm not very good with my left and right. Like, as hard as that is to believe, I have to really concentrate on what's left and what's right. So I thought, how am I going to conquer this? So I went and put myself on a drill course. And even the instructors were like, oh, what are you doing here? And I was like, I've come back again. They were like, this is crazy. You know, but it was one of the ways I was going to just get over it. Plus, it was in Catterick, so it was only down the road. And I was buying a house at the time, so that was easier. But, you know, yeah, just challenge it head on. Take whatever fear you've got and head on. And I went on an equality and diversity course as well, because I was sick of pregnant women, to be fair, trying to pull the wool.
Right.
You know, and I was sick of, like, you know, we just started getting a lot of Fijians and Ghanaians and stuff like that. And so I wanted to know what the Bobby Moore was with him, what the score was.
Yeah.
So go on the course and find out. And, you know, it all turns out it's all common sense, which I already knew, you know. But yeah, 100%. If something scares you or you're not sure about something, just go and attack it. What's the worst? You can just fail the course, or they can say you're not actually very good at that. Then you say, right, okay, no worries, then just regroup and then go back at it again. Or just park it and actually decide that isn't for you. Just find something else to do and find another challenge.
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing wrong with saying that. There's nothing wrong with saying, well, actually, I tried it and I wasn't very good at it and I don't like it. No problem. Find something else. Yeah.
So what would be the three main things you would say to somebody then who, like, after listening to everything you've done, what do you think are your three main kind of key, you could say, strengths or key habits or key things that you would say to anybody, like if you're wanting to improve your life or you want to improve where you are or you want to even just have confidence in yourself, because like you said, you're robust, you're confident, and you own whatever situation you go into. What would you say are the three key things for anybody to take on board to get that?
I think you've probably just said the most of them there, Gemma. I think the most important thing is own every single thing that you do. You've got to own it. You can't go around blaming everybody else for something that you're doing.
Baby wants you.
George, let me just finish this phone call. I'm 5 more minutes, okay, babe? Just tell it to be cool. Number one rule, take responsibility and own everything that you do. Waste the time blaming everybody else. Gets you nowhere. Number two, have a plan. Have a plan and attack it. You know, however which way, get it, just attack it and try and do the best that you can. And don't be scared of failure. As long as you can learn from it, don't be scared of it.
I love it. No, that's great. Great advice, Leanne. And I think that can be taken in anybody's life, on any route, personal life, careers, everything. It's the heart of who you are, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
totally. Yeah. Well, I just want to say thank you for joining me and sharing your journey, because I think it's inspirational and everything you've done, and the fact that you rose to the ranks that you have, and you're continuing to rise further as well, and the situations you've been in as well. And I love the fact that you just kind of take life by the balls and you just enjoy it, like just enjoy every moment that you're in. Yeah,
exactly. What's the point of being here if you're not going to enjoy it? We're here for a good time, not a long time, Jen.
That's very true. That's very true.
Yeah, no, thanks for picking me, love. I really appreciate that. It was nice. I enjoyed it.
No, thank you.
Everyone gets something out of it.
I'm sure they will. So, no, thank you again. And I just want to say to the listeners, this will be on YouTube. So Gemma Sharples YouTube for you to follow when it gets released. So tune in there. And again, thank you, Leanne. So I'll give you
all right, Jen. Thanks, love.
Okay, then. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.